Recovery podcast is real life stories from everyday people in recovery. From mental health issues, trauma, substance misuse, and behavioural addictions. Please visit the website www.lifeinrecovery.co.uk for links to social media and a range of books written by your podcast host, Ren Coy.
Hello and welcome to Life in Recovery podcast with me, John Loxley. I'm an alcoholic in recovery. Now, you're normally used to me calling myself by my pseudonym Ren Coy, which is a name I've been using since I wrote my first book, Addiction Prevention, 12 Steps to Spiritual Awakening, back in 2015. And at the time, when I wrote that book, I wanted to observe the 12th tradition of 12-step fellowships, which is to remain anonymous at the level of press, radio and films. And that was why I chose a pseudonym, and it just seemed quite appropriate. I had the tattoo on my neck which says Ren, which means clean in Swedish, and it also means love and peace in Japanese. And I've always had a real affiliation with kind of Japanese and Eastern cultures, especially since I got sober. And the koi part of the name is like a koi carp, which is the symbol of perseverance in adversity. And I've got a tattoo of a koi carp on my right arm. So that was the way that the Ren Coy name came about. And then over the past kind of 5 years, I've written another 4 books, and 3 of them under the name Ren Coy. And then I started the podcast in 2018. So that's been running just over 2 years now. And I just used the name. I just carried on using the name Ren Coy. And it wasn't until last year, 2020, that I started to think about whether I wanted to maintain my anonymity, because I'd had a couple of guests on the podcast, Arlena Allen, Dennis Berry, and also Rob Kelly as well, who I discussed my maintaining my anonymity and the reasons why I was using a pseudonym. And they kind of convinced me really that I could probably help more people by just being myself, using my name, my birth name. And considering that the reason why I record my podcast and the reason why I've written these books is to help people, which is something that I've learned through recovery. It's all about getting sober, having a spiritual awakening, and then trying to carry the message of recovery to the still suffering alcoholic. And in my mind, that is to try and carry a message of hope and of help, love and service to everybody, not just to people in recovery. So that's kind of what my mission has been for the last 5 years, really, I suppose. And so 2021 marks the kind of start, really, of me just being myself, just being John Loxley, putting myself out there. Hence the reason for these videos, and just started doing my TED Walk videos the other day, which was a lot of fun. And I'm just picking up the phone really and talking into it when the mood takes me, really. So that's I just wanted to kind of say that really around the kind of whole name thing. And I suppose just take this opportunity to talk a little bit about my journey of recovery, especially recently. I mean, I think that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a massively positive effect on a lot of people, and I know that sounds crazy, and I'm not, poo-pooing the amount of people that have died and the really difficult situations that people have been in and losing their businesses, and there's a lot of really terrible stuff that's happened over the last 10 or 11 months. But what's also happened for a lot of people, and including myself, is it's meant that I've slowed down a lot, and I've really taken stock of the things that are important to me in my life. And I've got heavily back into my music. I was a DJ for 10 years, and I quit DJing when, I stopped DJing in about 2009, which was just before I kind of got sober. And I then, I got into recovery, and a couple of years into my recovery, in about 2011, 2012, I decided that I was going to get back into the music because I loved it. I was a hard house DJ for years. I loved techno and trance and basically anything with a really cool kick drum and a groovy bass line was what I was always into. I decided that I wanted to get back into the music, so I rang up my old mate and I asked him if he was interested in writing some music together and giving it another go, really, and trying to achieve all the things that we didn't achieve the first time round, which was, I was always playing in the kind of back rooms at big events, but never in the main room. So we did that. We started writing a load of music, and people loved it. We were kind of bringing back the old hard house sound. People were really into it. We started getting booked for bigger gigs, which culminated in a gig in Ibiza and a gig in the main room of the Ideal Weekender down in Prestatyn at Pontins. And it was like all my dreams had come true, really. I was sat in the back room with all the other DJs, the Tidy Boys, Sam Townend, Ben Stevens, all those guys, and I just felt like I didn't really belong. And I got onto the decks on the stage, and I played my heart out with my DJ partner, and it just came over me, this feeling that like I just can't do this anymore. And I think it was because it just felt empty, like I'd been in recovery by this point for 3 or 4 years. I think it was 3 years, and I'd learned that nothing was ever going to make me feel happiness and give me peace of mind that was external of myself, i.e., fame was empty, material things were empty, casual sex was empty. There was no real substance to it, and I knew that I could be kind of better spending my time helping other people in recovery rather than, chasing this dream of kind of fame and adulation each weekend in the nightclubs. And plus, my marriage had basically ended as a result of me following that dream. So my long-term partner, who had been with me all the way through the madness, through the drinking and the drugs and the crazy clubbing nights and the after parties, she'd been with me all the way through that, and then stayed with me in early recovery. But because of me kind of still chasing this dream, and I suppose going on a new journey in recovery, we grew apart. And and the marriage broke down, and we ended up getting divorced. And during that time of the marriage breaking down, that was when I played that gig. And and I came really close to drinking on a number of occasions during that period, because I just wanted to change the way that I felt. I didn't feel comfortable with myself. I just wanted out. My mind wanted a break from the stress. And anyway, when I was in playing that gig, I was looking around, and obviously the majority of people were off their heads on pills and whatever other drugs and alcohol. And it crossed my mind, and I just thought, I could take something tonight, and nobody would ever know, and nobody here would think badly of me. In fact, they'd probably encourage me to crack on. And I was sharing a chalet with a girl who was kind of an acquaintance, not a friend, and I thought, I'm sure I could get her to sleep with me if I really tried, and all this stuff was going through my mind, and it just wasn't where I wanted to be. So that night I made the decision that I was going to put my headphones down for good and crack on with my recovery. So from then, in 2013 to now in 2021, there hasn't really been that much music involved in my life, if I'm honest. I've been listening to podcasts more so than anything else, and it's been really good. I've kind of re-educated myself, I suppose, over those 7 years. Re-educated myself in spiritual values, and I've done a lot of research on science and spirituality, and hence my new book, which will be out this year, which is called All Is One: The Science and Spirituality of Consciousness, and that's under my pseudonym Ren Coy. So I've been doing a lot of research, and I'm currently, not only do I do my day job, but I'm also at kind of night school online, training to be a life coach. I'm constantly keeping myself busy, but one of the things that's kind of come back is this desire and love for, I suppose, creating music more so than actually DJing. And actually, I've just been watching a really amazing film, which is my old, I say old, one of my DJ heroes, Fergie, aka Robert Ferguson. He's just he did a film in June 2020 with his mate, Mr. Snodden. I can't remember his first name, but I watched it. It's an hour and a half conversation basically about Fergie's life, and it was really interesting. Two things. One of them was, I've always felt this massive affiliation with Fergie because he's the same age as me. When he used to DJ at the clubs in Leeds, and I used to go and watch him DJ, he had this shaved head and this big chain that he wore, and I dressed very similarly, which was random because I wasn't copying him or anything. And the first time I spoke to him, he was just really encouraging and just dead down to earth, just a lovely, lovely bloke. And he was a person who made this massive decision to stop playing the music that he was famous for, hard house music, and this legacy that had been passed on to him by the late great Tony DeVee, who died. And basically all his gigs went to Fergie, all his records went to Fergie, and he just made this massive decision to just change completely the music that he was playing, because he wasn't in love with it anymore, and just started playing techno on Radio 1. And I remember hearing him playing that music on Radio 1 and thinking, wow, he's got some balls, this guy. What a decision to make. And it really kind of influenced my decision as well to branch out into other types of music. And I've always had an affiliation with the music that he plays as well. I love his tunes. I've always bought a lot of the stuff that he plays in his sets. So anyway, I was watching this film, and then right towards the end of the film, I was quite shocked actually, because it turns out that he no longer drinks. So he's in recovery. I'm not sure whether he's in formal recovery because he doesn't mention that. I don't know whether he's like a 12-stepper or anything. I don't think he is. I think he just made a decision to stop drinking because it was causing him problems in his life, and his wife basically said, "I've had enough. If you don't stop." And it was a lovely moment actually watching it, because I met him again in Ibiza. I think it was in like 2007, something like that. And I went to Privilege because he was playing, and I knew that he was there was a potential that he might play one of my tracks because I'd sent him some music and he was thinking about signing them to his eccentric music label. And got to this club, and I really my two best mates who I wrote the music with, they were hanging from the night before, so they didn't want to come to the club, and I was like, there's no way I'm missing this, I'm going. Anyway, got in a taxi and I went to this club on my own. Got into the club, as you can imagine, I met a few people, dropped a couple of pills, and I was raving away. And then Fergie comes on the decks and starts smashing this set. Everybody's going wild, loving it. And then the next minute he drops my track. It was called Airplay by the Knox, and he drops this tune, and I'm like, these two people that I've met, I'm like, that's my tune. And they were like, what? And I said, that's my tune, I wrote that tune. They said, really? I said, yeah. So I ran up to the kind of front of the DJ booth, and I said to her, Fergie, I said, that's my tune. I said, I'm Lox. And he went, really? He says, yes. He says, come up. So he took me into the DJ booth with him, and we just had a good laugh and had a bit of a dance and stuff. And he was just really, really sound, really top bloke. And then at the end of the night, I stood around outside waiting for a taxi. And there he was. He was stood there just waiting to get a taxi himself. So I went over to him. I said, where are you going? And he said, oh, Ibiza town, or wherever it was that we were. I can't really remember where we were staying. And I said, do you want to share a taxi? And he said, yeah, cool. So he gets in the taxi with us. We're all off our heads in the back of this taxi, and he's just at the front having a proper laugh with us and taking the piss out of us. And it was just a surreal moment. And I begged him to come to this after party with us, when he wasn't having it. He says, nah. He says, I need to go and get my head down. So anyway, he got out of the taxi and went off, and we carried on to this after party. And probably one of the best after parties I've ever had, actually. It was in an apartment with a balcony overlooking the beach, and it was brilliant. And then my mate, who didn't come to the gig that night, big shout out to my best bud Baggy, he then came to this party and cracked on with us, and he couldn't believe it. He was like, oh, I can't believe I've missed that. Anyway, so I digress slightly. The point of it was that it was interesting that Fergie has now in 2020 he's decided that he's going to sell. Well, he's sold his house, his $1 million house in $1 million house in Vegas, which is where he now is, and he's selling. Him and his wife are selling all the stuff, and he just wants to go and live in a trailer park and make music, and then he wants to buy essentially like some sort of a camper van essentially and travel around America. And that is just amazing. Like, I've got massive respect for the guy. It's just about like these life changes. And similarly, like, I've just got back into the music, and I've started writing some music with a guy that I've met in recovery, a guy called Tim, and he's an amazing producer. And he's a person that's just kind of been sat in his bedroom, week after week after week. He's just done it as a hobby, and he's never really had the confidence to branch out. And anyway, he sent me some of his music, and I could tell straight away that this guy was really talented. So I just asked him if he'd be interested in collaborating, and we've just finished our first track, which is called Higher Powered. And it's really good, if I'm honest. Like, I'm really pleased with it. And it's got in the breakdowns, it's got a vocal sample of AA co-founder Bill Wilson saying bits from how it works in the big book, and it's just really cool. Like it kind of marks a new era for me with the music. Like I'm making the type of music that I really, really want to make, and that's kind of, you know, that's kind of close to my heart and really meaningful. And I'm trying to bring it all together, I suppose, is what I'm saying. I'm trying to bring the music, my recovery, the podcasts, my social media stuff. I'm just trying to bring it all together, and try to, you know, push out as much love and positivity out there in the world as I possibly can. As I said, this year has been about slowing down, and you know, it's been a twofold thing really. On the one hand, there's been all this really kind of great stuff. I've slowed down, I've been able to spend loads more time with my family. My relationship with my partner Adele has gone from strength to strength. I think, you know, we've had our ups and downs obviously during the lockdowns, but we're learning to live with each other and accept each other for who we are, and to not snipe at each other and to not get on each other's backs about the stupid little things that don't really mean anything. And we're learning to trust each other more, and we're learning to, you know, to just kind of like be one unit really, which is especially difficult for me because I don't trust anybody. You know, I've not trusted people throughout my life, so it takes a lot to earn my trust. And Adele definitely has my trust, and I try to be as honest as I possibly can in the relationship. And I'm just totally blessed that I've got this beautiful daughter. She's nearly 11 months old, Alice, and she's just she's just a clever little sausage. She's beautiful. She's just a blessing in my life, you know. Like, I don't want to get all gushy, but I feel very blessed that I'm a dad, and also that I'm a stepdad as well. My two stepchildren, they're beautiful, clever, intelligent, funny, like really creative, both of them. And again, just another blessing of recovery. So, you know, life slowed down. I've been able to spend more time with the family, more time on my music, more time creatively. I've actually finished as well and just self-published another book of poems, which is called The Bends, and that's under my name, John Loxley. And it's actually a book of poems that I wrote in 1996. I mean, around that time I was like heavily into Oasis and Blur and, you know, all the Britpop stuff. Well, not Blur so much actually. I was a big Oasis fan and Stone Roses. And I really would have loved to have been the lead singer of a band called The Bends, which was my idea. But I can't sing. I'm absolutely tone deaf. And I started writing these songs, and it was like, you know, talk about the mental obsession of the addict. I wrote hundreds and hundreds of these songs in these books. And then for some reason, I don't know, I think I was like probably an egomaniac from the age of 16. I thought that I was going to become something special, I think, and I ended up typing out these songs on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of paper, and then I put them in envelopes, and I was trying to copyright them basically. I can't remember how I did it now. I think if you sealed them and date stamped them, then they were copywritten. I think that was what it was. And I put them up in the loft. Anyway, I don't know what happened to them, but what I've got left from then was these books, these notebooks, 2 of them, and they were full of all these, just scribbles of all these songs. So I've binned loads of them, but 93 of them made the cut, and have comprised this book of sonnets now. So I've just like I said, I've just published that. Probably an absolute load of rubbish, but I don't really care. I enjoyed listening to them, and in a weird kind of way, they were somewhat prophetic. Like there was some references from then to things that have happened now. Like one of them, for example, was one of them's called Alice, and that's the name of my daughter. And I didn't pick that name. Adele picked that name, and I just loved it. So there was a lot of stuff in there that was just like really kind of coincidental, synchronistic, fit in with my kind of spiritual worldview. And it was an absolute pain in the arse writing them all out, but it was worth it. You know, it's worth it to have this physical book now that I can give to my daughter when she grows up. And that's the reason why I do a lot of this stuff, really. You know, I talk to my sponsor quite regularly about legacy. You know, what's the legacy that I'm going to leave behind? Well, the first part of my legacy is I would like to be considered by my daughter and my stepkids as being a good dad. You know, someone that was there for them, not just physically but emotionally as well. And the second part of my legacy, I suppose, is the music, coupled with the podcasts and the writing of these books. And hopefully, you know, my kids, when they come to an age when they give a shit, basically, when they're actually interested in knowing about, you know, who I am as a person, or who I was as a person back then I think it'll be interesting for them to read. Because I see this journey of recovery and this spiritual journey, I see it as a lifelong journey. So I have no intention of letting up on the stuff that I do. You know, I stopped doing the podcast last year, and I lasted about 6 weeks, I think. I just really, really missed it. You know, I missed it not only because I enjoy having the conversations myself, but also because people were asking me like why I'd stopped, and they were saying that they missed it. So that's the most important thing, isn't it? Like, there might be people out there that really rely on listening to those podcasts and enjoy what they hear and get something from it. So that's the reason why I carry on with that stuff. And the music is about, you know, my enjoyment. It's about doing something that I love, that's creative for creativity's sake. And if people like it, they like it. That's great. You know, if people don't like it, then that's fine too. And writing the books, well, two things there. One, I love to learn. So I love the research that has to go into writing these books. I love learning new stuff and regurgitating it onto the page. And two, again, I hope that it will help my kids in the future to understand me, and I hope that it will help people now that happen to read stuff in there. That one of the key things that I've always thought about is helping the layperson to understand what recovery is all about, really, because there's a lot of people who, you know, the vast majority of people have some sort of issues, like some sort of mental health issues, some sort of addiction issues, you know, similarly to what Russell Brand's been talking about, like, is exactly what I said in 2015 in my first book, that everybody is kind of like on a gradient. Addiction is a gradient, and, you know, some people might just be addicted to their phones, or addicted to social media, or addicted to TV programs, whereas other people might have a little addiction to, it might be that they have to have a glass of wine every single night. And then you've got the extreme end of the person who's whacking an 8-ball of crack cocaine and heroin in their arm on a daily basis, you know, or the person that drinks themselves to oblivion every night, like I did, you know, for many years. So I think that, you know, recovery, specifically for me, the 12-step program, I think that it could be valuable to anybody that's looking to improve their mental health. You know, my kind of take on addiction is that addiction is essentially an inability to manage our emotions. So what, you know, if you've not got the highest level of emotional intelligence, then emotions become like a disorder, like an emotional disorder. And that emotional disorder becomes mental health issues. The mental health issues, which is anxiety and depression, and mental obsession around trying to control your environment and control the things that are going on. That needs to be medicated, and what most people medicate it with is substances, alcohol and drugs, illicit drugs of all descriptions. And some people also medicate it with behaviours like sex, gambling, shopping. But that is on a gradient, and I think it's been scientifically proven enough now that those that tend to be at the more extreme end of addiction tend to be the people that have had the worst childhood trauma. So, physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, families splitting up, infighting within the families, people going to jail within the families, all that kind of stuff. Like, the more factors there are in your childhood, the worse it tends to be when it comes to a person's addiction. So, I was kind of on that scale. I mean, my situation was I had an alcoholic father who got sober when I was 10. And that was it, really. There was no, there was no kind of major abuse going on in my household. But what I experienced and what came out of it essentially for me was I wouldn't say a lack of love, because I know my parents loved me. But as I said in the podcast with my dad, which was episode 50, I think it was essentially like a feeling of abandonment, really. Feeling that kind of like my dad wasn't there. And I think that, to be fair to my mum, I think my mum had to be more controlling than she would have normally had to be, because I was quite a naughty kid, really. And I felt as though, maybe she was a bit like too harsh with me. But these were all the feelings that I wasn't able to manage as a child. And then I found alcohol and drugs, and that was it. It was like the shackles were off. I was off at uni, off to the races, and I remember thinking to myself, as soon as I leave home, that's it, then I'm going to do exactly what I want to do. And I did, and I did that for many years, which wound me up in recovery. So that was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, though, coming into recovery. So, I don't blame my parents for anything, that's for sure. I mean, my parents are absolutely fantastic. Like, they've always provided for me, especially like materially. They've always provided for me, and I don't wish anything was any different. I don't have any regrets. Everything that happened in my life led me to the point where I had to change. There was no other option. I either changed and got sober, or I would have ended up in prison, in a mental institute, or dead. Those were the options, because at the end I wanted to kill myself. I just couldn't live with myself. Couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with the mental health issues and the emotional unmanageability. So the only options were to kill myself or drink again, and I definitely didn't want to do that. And then this third option presented itself, and that was go to an AA meeting. My dad had been in recovery by this point for 20 odd years. I knew that it worked if I was willing to give it a try. So I did, and that was I think that was around September 2010. And I'd already been sober at that point for a year. And I've never looked back, It was absolutely the best decision that I've ever made in my life. And life in recovery is, although it has been difficult at times, life in recovery is living my best life. That's all I can say. It is living my best life. So I suppose just to finish, 2021 for me, I think I've got all my ducks in a row at the minute. I think I understand what I need to prioritise. Big shout out to Dennis Berry, actually, my good friend now, who is a life coach, and he gave me some life coaching for a few months, and he really helped me to understand the need to focus and prioritise the things that you want to achieve. So at the time, it was to finish my book, All Is One. And whereas that probably would have taken me 6 months to finish, I got it finished in a month. And it's been similar with other things that I've been working on. And he kind of inspired me. He kind of said to me, like, you're a natural at this. Like, you should be a life coach. And he kind of inspired me to look into it. So as I said, I started that training about a month ago. And that's going well. I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot more stuff. And I also love my day job as well. I mean, I'm very privileged. I don't obviously mention the name of the organisation that I work for, because I try and keep that separate, but I'm very privileged that I manage a team of people who are absolutely brilliant at what they do. They help the homeless in Birmingham with their substance misuse issues, and they're all really, really good. They're all very, very dedicated to the work that they do and to helping people. And I see it as my duty to help them, as well as the clients, obviously, but I don't have as much dealings with the clients on the ground. But to help them, to deal with all the shit that they have to deal with on a daily basis, because it's a hard job, and to just decompress from that stuff and to help them to grow as well in their roles. My role essentially in life is a leader. That's my personality type is the J personality type, which is the leader. And fear in the past always stopped me from stepping up into that role. It always meant that I kind of took a back seat. That happened as I got older, actually, because when I was a young kid, I was always the leader, and I was like, the leader on the football pitch. I was always pick the team up and, score the goal when the goal was needed, and even like act as the captain, even if I wasn't the captain, that kind of thing. But when I started drinking and taking drugs, despite the fact that I was building a fairly decent DJ career, and I suppose kind of leading in that way as best as I could, and managing a couple of record labels over those years, I just never reached my full potential. And now it's time to do that. It's time, as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of time to be the leader and to reach my full potential and to be a positive influence in everybody's life that's in my life, my kids, my partner, my parents even, and all my friends and fellows in recovery. So I suppose what I want to say, just to finish off this podcast, is thank you to everybody who has supported me and supported the podcast over the last couple of years, and thank you for your continued support, and thanks for giving me a reason to do this stuff, and to be of service as best as I can possibly be. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening, and if you've been affected by any of the issues discussed in the podcast, please see a range of mutual aid organisations in the show notes. Also, don't forget that you can support the Life in Recovery podcast by visiting patreon.com/lifeinrecovery. Peace and love, and goodbye for now.